Alrighty. So here I am for my second attempt at using the MOVFF instruction. The first time I used MOVFF, I experimented with some code which moved port B to port C, or actually port B to port D. The point is that I was using port B as an input, and I even set the trace register for port B. I set it to all ones, making port B an input. But it didn't work. And I can't remember if port B is configured as analog pins. I don't know, so that's an open question. I seem to remember something like that. But I don't want to speak at length on that because I might include an error in my video. So no matter, I scrapped the idea of using port B and went with port C as an input. So first of all, use the org directive, moved this value to the oscillator, which from previous videos tells me that I'm setting the internal oscillator to 4 MHz. I don't exactly remember how that all works. No matter. Clear F, trace D, setting port D to all zeros, making port D all outputs, and then setting port C, set F, trace C, setting port C as all inputs. Then I included a label again using the opcode MOVFF. Port C, as all inputs, is going to accept data and move that data to port D. And the next instruction is go to. And where is it going to? It's going to again, which is the label, which will bring it back up to this line of code and iterate through this code forever. And here's the end directive, which I understand is required. So I'll get to my breadboard setup and explain things further. But I will say that the 4 most significant bits of port C, I grounded them. I sent them to ground. So this experiment is just going to manually toggle the 4 least significant bits of port C, which is an input port. I'm using a special device I call the switchy switcheroo, which is a little kit that I built from switches which can set the state of the bits of port C.
Okay, so where to begin? Well, first of all, this is my switchy switcheroo. It takes power and ground, and it can turn everything off with this switch. And there are 4 outputs on the switchy switcheroo, and it's hard to see, but here are the female headers here, 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 and here. Maybe I can zoom in. You can see the female headers. and I can toggle them on and off. You can't see that. Hold on, like this switch here. I can toggle them on and off. And I have 4 of the different switches all being sent out to the least significant 4 bits of port C. And because of the code that I wrote, all of port C will be used as an input port, and it will take that data that port C takes in, and it will send it out to port D, which is an output port. Port D are all blue LEDs. That's just how I chose to color code it. This is D0, D1, and this bottom one is D2, and this is D3. Well, anyway, the point is that port C is an input, port D is taking all of port C's input and outputting it. And I can toggle those bits. The 4 most significant bits of port C are being grounded. And you can't really see all that, but in a roundabout way, it's being sent into like this ground female header. Anyway, without talking too much, I certainly do lots of that. I can toggle the inputs on and off. This switch doesn't work very well, but anyway. So that's neat. Now, MOVFF is a great instruction, but there are ways of using the MOVFF and MOVWF opcodes to do the same thing as MOVFF. And although it's not exciting, I will methodically go through and try to demonstrate that as well.
Alright, so here's the MOVFF opcode. And there's actually another way to write this. For reference, see page 34 of my fancy reference manual, which I won't name specifically. So here's the different way of doing things. MOVFF. In this case, I'm going to move port C as the chosen file, and then move it to the WReg. And then I'm going to move WF, so move the WReg to a file. And the chosen file in this case is port D. And then it has the goto instruction again. It goes back up to the label and just iterates through the loop forever. The comments I suppose I will read. Bring data from C, port C, to WReg. Output to port D. Then keep doing it. So now I will clean and build. You can't see it because it's off screen, but it says build successful. And now I will upload the code. Verify complete. It worked.
All right, so I vouch that this is the MOVFF and MOVWF version of the code. And I can toggle the bits on the same way. The switchy switcheroo doesn't really work that well for this first switch. So that works. So now I have two different sample codes. So somehow I'm going to include that below.